A stronger day, be your best every day. Hi, I'm Adimus, founder and director of Strong Optimizer. I aim to help you stay healthy, be happier, and deal with challenges with greater resilience. Have you tried to eat healthier, exercise more, spend more time with your loved ones, and do what matters? How did it go? Did the changes come easily and naturally? I bet the answer is no. So, why is it so difficult to change or create lasting well-being habits? Today, you will meet Sue Langley. Sue will show you how you can harness your brain power to create lasting well-being habits with a 3-step neuroscience approach. Thank you. Good day, everyone. My name is Demas, and I'm the founder and director of Strengths Optimizer. Thank you for watching Strength Optimizers, the Science Up Your Wellbeing series. Today, we have Sue Langley joining us. Sue is a keynote speaker, global consultant, and a positive leadership expert. Sue specializes in the practical applications of neuroscience, emotional intelligence, and positive psychology. And I believe Sue is also the founder and the CEO of the Langley Group, in which she's taught thousands of business leaders, coaches, and consultants how to create positive workplace culture and harness the brain potential. Sue is also created the very first nationally recognized qualifications in Diploma of Positive Psychology and Wellbeing in Australia. Welcome aboard, Sue. How are you doing?
I am well, thank you, Adamus. It's wonderful to be with you.
Thank you that you can spend some time to share with us some of your insight of wisdoms in positive psychology. And today we are going to talk about how we can use the research and applications in neuroscience to build or to create long-lasting well-being habits. But before we do or dive into the fascinating world of neuroscience, let's address the elephant in the room, which is what is well-being? I mean that we know that the word well-being is used in many shapes and forms and in many different contexts. And some people do associate well-being with the word health or wellness. So Sue, can you explain the differences between health, wellness, and well-being for us, please?
Oh, it's a really good question. And I suppose I could just bring up the actual definition because I'm sure, as you know, in positive psychology, researchers' jobs is to operationalize all of those terms so we can measure them. So we know there are specific definitions for wellness, well-being, flourishing, happiness, etc. And they're all slightly different. But I suppose if you think of us as normal people going about our day, well-being is when you're experiencing more positive emotion than negative emotion on a day-to-day basis, and you tend to be more satisfied with your life. So if we think about my subjective well-being, the way that I analyze that, I suppose, if you were to ask me about my well-being, I would integrate a whole range of things, as in, am I happy generally, as am I experiencing more positive emotions? But I would also integrate my satisfaction with that sense of fulfillment that I get, or how engaged I am in my work, or whether I'm feeling physically healthy. So what's interesting is when we think about well-being, when you ask me about my well-being, I'm probably going to integrate in my thinking some of the other things, such as how well do I feel physically. So this is the interesting thing. Yes, we can look at the definitions, but for us as an everyday human being, we probably know if our well-being is high or not just by how we analyze how we're feeling and what we're experiencing every day. And the thing that I think is so powerful about that is it makes it harder to measure, of course, but let's imagine I asked you to rate your well-being on a scale of 1 to 10. You could say, oh, I think I'm an 8.5. I can't turn around and say, no way, I reckon you're only a 4. Because how would I know? I'm not in you. I can't tell. So I think that's the wonderful thing about when we're researching well-being, we try and put operationalized definitions. But when you're experiencing it, you will take a range of things included when you assess yourself.
So it sounds like well-being is multi-elements, multifaceted. And therefore, when we ask people about their well-being, perhaps this can be useful to be a little more specific, whether we're asking, for example, in terms of their positive emotions, whether we're asking them about their meaning or purpose in life, or even their life satisfaction as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a paper that came out earlier this year, actually, on trying to, again, operationalize different levels of well-being. So David DiSabato and Todd Kashton, they came up with a sort of a hierarchy whereby there's G, meaning general well-being, which would be if I asked you to rate yourself 1 to 10, what would you say? But then there's different components of it. So there's different constructs, there's different contexts, there's different energy levels or valence, if you like. So we could be talking about the particular construct of emotions, and then we talk about, well, how much positive emotion to negative emotion, and then we talk about, well, within positive emotion, how much energy does that emotion have? So this is a really cool thing that comes from the research, is we've got this general concept up here, but then we can nut it down to very specific context, constructs, etc., that fall out of that. It's a really good paper, actually.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And so I also know that you are experts in neuroscience. In fact, you have been awarded the first master's in the neuroscience and leadership from Middlesex University. So I know this is the big questions for you, but in a nutshell, what is neuroscience?
So neuroscience basically is the study of the human nervous system, whether it's the brain and the central nervous system or the peripheral nervous system. But most of the research is obviously what's going on in the brain. And the thing that's so wonderful about that is it gives us so many great clues on why we feel what we feel and why we might have higher or lower levels of well-being.
I see, I see. Obviously, and I assume that many people would like to have a high level of well-being, but unfortunately, a lot of people also struggling trying to change their behaviors or create a lasting well-being habits. So why is it so difficult to change our behaviors? So?
Well, the challenge for us is a lot of our habits are very integrated. And if you think about the basics of how the brain works, there's a particular area of your brain that many people would have heard of, your limbic system, that helps control your habits. So you have a cluster of neurons called your basal ganglia, which is responsible for your habits. And unfortunately, your habits and that part of the brain's job is to keep you repeating them. So even though consciously in your prefrontal cortex, if you like, you might say, okay, from now on, I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock and I'm going to go for a run because my well-being is really important to me. If you're used to hitting the alarm 7 times before you get out of bed, your area of your brain that's responsible for your habits is going to keep doing it the next morning and the next morning and the next morning. Same as if I want to stop looking at my phone at night. Well, if I keep putting it next to my bed to charge, it's really hard for my brain to stop the habit of picking it up. So because that part of our brain that's responsible for our habits is so automatic, it doesn't judge you, it just keeps you repeating them, whether it's good for your well-being or not. It takes a lot of effort from the prefrontal cortex to override that part of the brain. And that's why we can barely stick to new habits, because the automatic part kicks in again. And neuroscientists often call it the system X, meaning reflexive, because it's like a reflex, it just keeps going. Whereas this part of the brain soon runs out of effort. If it's too hard, it goes, oh, well, you eat that bar of chocolate that you have every day at 3 o'clock, that's fine. It's hard to self-regulate. So I think that's why, but there are some really good things we know about neuroscience about how to embed new habits that can really help us.
And thank you for asking my next questions, because obviously, it can be a little bit doom and gloom with the fact that, oh, if I have formed certain habit, which means that it is a repetitive behaviors, and as much as I wanted to change, as much as I have the willpower, but sounds like I may need to succumb into this repetitive behaviors. But I'm glad to hear you say that neuroscience also teaches us that, hey, it's possible to form or to create new habits. So what has neuroscience teach us about creating lasting well-being habits then, Sue?
Okay, great question. And I think one of the key things that I will bust the myth up front is when people say 21 days to build a new habit, it's not always as easy as that. It depends on how embedded and ingrained your habits are. So one of the things we know about habits is it tends to work with cue, habit, reward. Cue, habit, reward. So something is a cue, like my phone next to my bed when I wake up in the morning. The habit is picking it up. Then the reward is seeing that I've got 27 new likes on my Facebook post or whatever it is. So that might be my cue, habit, reward. Or my cue, habit, reward might be it's 3 o'clock. The habit is a bar of chocolate. The reward is the dopamine hit and the little sugar rush I get from eating it. In the morning, I'm planning on getting up, but the cue is the alarm. The habit is switching it off. and the reward is an extra half an hour sleep. So sometimes if you think about the way that cue habit reward works, if we tackle things at various intervals, we can shift them. So if you think about cue, well, first thing is if I want to stop looking at my phone at night, put it in a different room so that it's not the cue in the morning.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can change the cue. Sometimes you can change the habit, so you can change what the cue means. So for instance, if my habit is having a bar of chocolate at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I can change the habit and have a protein ball. It's still the same cue linking to a habit, it's just a different habit.
Yeah.
And I still get the reward of a little bit of the sugar hit, but it's not the same processed and, you know, unhealthy thing, etc., etc. Again, the same with 6 o'clock in the morning, the alarm goes off. If I get the habit of I've got my workout gear there and I get out of bed and I put it on and then I do my workout and I feel amazing, potentially I've got the reward of the dopamine from the exercise. The thing to bear in mind is, and again, we've got some clues from positive psychology about how to interrupt this pattern. If you look at the work of Barbara Fredrickson's broaden and build theory, she talks about the upward spiral. So once we can trigger positive emotions, we can then create an upward spiral. So if you take new habits and you go, okay, there's a cue of my alarm at 6 o'clock in the morning. I want to get in the habit of exercising. Well, guess what? If I attach as much positive emotion to that as possible, I get a bigger reward, which means I'm more likely to do it again the next morning. So I used this myself to get me out of bed in the morning. And I did silly little things. I put a huge smile on my face as I ran along the beach. So I've got a big grin. I've got a music playlist of some of my favorite 80s and 90s songs that I sing to at the top of my voice as I run along. When I get to the end of the beach, I'm like, yay me, woohoo, and I celebrate. So what I tried to do to get me into the habit is add as much positive emotion to that new well-being activity as possible, so that my brain gets a bigger reward, which means I want to repeat the whole process again. And I just think the science is wonderful because I basically tested the science. The theory told me it would work. I tested it and it did.
Awesome. So wonderful to know. And I guess that, again, a lot of time building habit, it takes more than just a sheer willpower. As we talk about, sometimes we have to be a bit more creative. We have to know actually what rewards or what motivates or what drives us, so that it can become something that we actually look forward rather than a chore, something that, oh no, I have to run again, you know, otherwise so and so that is to say that, oh no, I'm being lazy. But again, as I say, just attach and infuse it with a lot more positive emotions, then it can become a lot more sustainable and we feel more motivated in achieving the task as well.
Absolutely. And we also know that many habits actually string together to form rituals. So if you think of your ritual before you go to bed or when you get up in the morning, you will literally have like 50 mini habits that all string together with what you do. Again, if you want to build a new habit in, if you put it into an existing ritual or routine, it actually can make it easier. So one habit reward triggers or creates a cue for the next one. And the next one and the next one. So I know myself, when I get up in the morning, I empty the dishwasher while the kettle's boiling. I make myself a warm lemon water. I fill up my water bottle. I go for my walk. When I come home, my water bottle's already full. So that's my cue. I need to put my green drink, my powders in it and drink that so I don't forget. So it's almost like I try and do it so one thing cues another, cues another, cues another, cues another.
Yeah. It sounds like it's also very intentional and deliberate rather than by default, I just play by ears, be spontaneous and see what happened there.
Yeah, look, absolutely, Adamus. And you will know this from your studies. There's a saying, positive psychology is not a spectator sport. You can't just know it. You can't do a master's and assume your well-being is going to go up. You actually have to do stuff every day.
Yes, that's right. I had to do a little bit of what we call the daily hustle sometimes.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. So you're saying that, look, you know, the myth is that perhaps it takes more than 21 days to build a new habit. So again, when it comes to well-being, I know we all have our little things that sort of give us a little bit of pleasure, but after a while we feel a little bit guilty. We say, oh, it's not good for my well-being. So apart from talk about, I have to remember the cue, the habit, and the reward. So is there any others, I guess, that elements that can help to strengthen this little system or this little feedback loop?
Yeah, so one of the things that's useful to know is if you're trying to break a habit, for instance, if you imagine the cue habit reward, if you're trying to change it and you still get the cue, what you might find is, and this is what we know from the way the brain is wired, is the reward is often the dopamine hit. Okay, so it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I eat my bar of chocolate, I get my dopamine hit, woohoo! But what actually happens if you make it more complex is the cue happens and then your brain has a little burst of dopamine. And it's this tiny little burst that goes, go on, you know you're going to eat it, aren't you? And I think of it as a dopamine cheer squad. It's basically in your little brain going, go on, you know you're going to eat it. So as much willpower as you might have had earlier on in the day, when you've gone, no, I'm giving up that bar of chocolate, at 2:59, your brain is actually almost encouraging you to eat it. How annoying is that?
Although the brain is my worst enemy. Come on, it's supposed to work with me.
So this is the interesting thing why it's not as easy to say 21 days to start a new habit, because actually it could be less than that depending. I mean, I used to sleep with my phone next to my bed because I was traveling a lot. Yeah. Well, that was a really easy habit to break. I just put it in another room. That was really easy. It took like 2 days to break the habit. Whereas other things, if you've been doing them for 20 or 30 years, it may take a little bit more effort. And what you want to try and do is not rely on willpower, because willpower will probably let you down, because your brain will try and go, come on, it's time, yeah. You know you want to do it. Whereas what you want to do is put things, those cues in place and those rituals in place, so you don't need to rely on willpower. Yeah. You've got the systems, if you like, there. And it's not about turning your life into something boring, but it is about putting those rituals. Like I write my gratitude diary every night. So I write in a journal and I write 3 things I'm grateful for every night. Yeah. Research tells me once a week is better, but I don't agree. I've tested myself. I always say, treat yourself as a scientific experiment. And I love it every night. But I do it in a bunch of other routines as well. So I lay on my Shakti mat for 20 minutes, which is basically a whole load of acupuncture on the back that's like 1,000 needles. I write my journal. I write my 3 things I'm grateful for. I read my book for 15 minutes. I get off my Shakti mat. I turn the light off and I'm done. So all those things sort of flow on top of another. But my Shakti mat is quite a new habit, and it's pretty painful to start with. Yeah. But because I'd already got a ritual before going to bed, it was very easy to pop that new one in there. So that's what I'd really encourage, is look for ways to embed even just one small thing. It's the little things that you do every day. And I know people don't want to hear this. People want to hear, here's a pill and you'll be happy. Well, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. But guess what? The little tiny things you do every day are so much more powerful than a pill.
And so much more sustainable, you know, and you'll be able to grow from that. You'll be able to harness that and expand that as well.
Absolutely. And know now and again that sometimes things will, you know, get knocked out. You know, we spoke about sort of COVID and things like that. Well, I know myself, I traveled down to Sydney from my home last week, and 2 nights in a row, I had midnight sessions with clients, so I wasn't getting my full sleep. 2 days in a row, I didn't do my usual exercise down the beach because I didn't have enough time. So as soon as things go a little bit out of whack, it's about, okay, that's acceptable. It's all right for 2 days. How do I get back to it as quickly as possible? So you are going to fall off your cushion now and again, if you like, and it's not going to be so good. And the odd evening of pizza, alcohol and chocolate may be okay.
Yeah.
Let's try and make sure it's the odd one.
That's right. I guess that we're not trying to create some military grade and regimented kind of routines that actually kill all joys of life, you see.
Absolutely. But the good thing is, and you all know this, you know, so many of the activities that we know around well-being actually are not only good for us long term, but they feel great in the moment too. So why wouldn't you want to keep doing them?
That's right. And I think that one of the very common comments I hear from people who like to create the well-being habit is that, I want to do that, but my environment is not supportive, you know, my family is not supportive, so and so is not encouraging. So what would you say to people who say things that, look, I want to do it, but the environment just doesn't help me to facilitate that to happen?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question, and it's a valid question, and I'm going to answer it in two ways. One is, be careful you're not using that as an excuse. So I could say, oh, I can't exercise. Well, of course I can. I've got a 6 foot square there. I could get down on my hands and knees right now and do some push-ups. I could do some star jumps, etc. So sometimes we do use it as an excuse. So I will say that, yes, you may have a tricky environment. Your people around you may not be supportive, and yet you do have a choice around what you do. So let's try and put aside the excuses that we sometimes use to make ourselves feel better. But the other thing is, it is harder to shift your wellbeing habits if your family or the people you live with are not supportive of it. I know myself, my brother-in-law had a heart attack. He died 3 times in a row and had to be brought around. He was told, give up smoking, drinking, lose weight. He tried, he gave up smoking for a while, but his partner he lived with didn't. Well, it's really hard to give up smoking when somebody that you love and you live with is doing it. So absolutely, if you can engage your whole family on things, that can be helpful to support you. But also if you can put boundaries in place yourself and share with your family, this is what I'd like to do. And again, I'll give you a real life example of this. So we had a gentleman come on our diploma of positive psychology and wellbeing. He was probably mid-50s, very intelligent chap who'd had some senior roles. And he was giving his time free of charge to do a 12-month leadership program in his community. And he asked me if I would come to the graduation. And I happened to be close by, so I drove the 5 hours and I did a session to say for the graduation for him, which was good. But during that gala evening, his 21-year-old son came up to me and he said, may I give you a hug? And I'm like, sure. I'm always happy to take hugs. This was pre-COVID, so you're allowed to hug people. And I said, why? And he said, for what you've done for my dad. And I said, I didn't do anything for your dad. He just learned this stuff. He said, no, you don't understand. He said, for 20 years of my life, he tried to tell me what I should do to boost my well-being, to be the best version of me, to develop myself. He gave me books. He told me all these things I should do. He said, since doing your diploma, he's changed so much that now I want to know what he's doing. So that's my second part of my answer to your question is, once you start to change, other people will probably start to want to know what you're doing, and they'll want more of it. They'll see you being happier or healthier or your well-being increasing, and they'll be like, I like that. And that's backed up in some brilliant research that I'm sure you came across at the Masters with Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler, where they looked at the ripple effect of when one people lifts their positive emotion, their well-being, the impact that it has on people sometimes 3 degrees away from you is considerable that you will never know about. So that's good enough to start working on yourself.
Excellent. And I think that this also sort of echoes to the good old cliche to say that the action sometimes, a lot of times, is better, stronger than words. You know, it's the changes that people can see, that people can feel, people can experience, and somehow trigger the question is that, hey, he or she's different, and it's a good version of different, and I think that maybe I can, or I want to have some of the difference as well.
Absolutely. And even little things like if I've decided I want to boost my well-being, and one of the things to do that is to put my phone in a drawer at 7 o'clock in the evening and not touch it again till the morning. You might not, if I'm living with you, you might not do that, but doesn't mean to say I can't. I can sit and read a book or do a puzzle or watch TV or whatever I want to do. I can still do it. If after a period of time you start to think, oh, she's, learning French, or she's going Bollywood dancing, or she's doing this and whatever, you might go, maybe there's time for me to do other things rather than sitting on my phone or my emails all night. So it's that by example, I guess. Don't let it stop you. Be the example that you want other people to follow.
Very well said, very well said. So just one last question for you. What is one thing that you have been doing this week to look after your own well-being?
Oh my goodness, there is more than one thing. I literally listed them down yesterday for a blog that I was writing, and I realized that even in my first 10 minutes of my day, I do 10 things.
10 well-being habits. Yeah.
10 things in my first 10 minutes. But some of the things that I do every single day where possible is exercise, fresh air. That's absolutely one of mine. Gratitude is something I always do every day, not just writing it down. I deliberately look for things during the day. And some people who know me, they know I do my 3 things at night. And sometimes somebody will send me an email or something, and I'll message them back going, "You're on my top 3 tonight." And they're like, "Oh yeah,
oh yes, make your day."
So I do lots of things like that. I regularly, I try and eat healthy. I don't drink much alcohol. I don't eat meat, you know, various other things on that regard. I'm not a big mindfulness practitioner, but I am very much into savoring. So I savor the moment. So the minute I wake up in the morning, it might sound sad to people listening, but I have a yellow bedroom and it's got little twinkly lights around the top. And I savor that. The first thing I do is I smile at my bright yellow bedroom and whatever. I savor my feet sinking into the carpet because we lived in a place with no carpet, and then we had carpet put in, and it's so squishy. And I savor, we have a frangipani tree that I can see from the window of my bedroom. And I literally lay and I savor the flowers on the frangipani tree. So even before I've got out of bed, in my first sort of 60 seconds or up until getting out of bed, I savor things constantly. So that's probably one of my number ones, is really savoring and being present with my surroundings, rather than just taking my yellow bedroom and my frangipani tree and my carpet for granted. I want to be really savoring them and noticing and feeling grateful for them.
Yeah, so good, so good. And to deliberate again, to not only to slow things down and just being paying attention, and as I said, just be in the moment, in the presence, rather than alarms goes off, wake up, go straight to the bathroom, brush the teeth, and then get myself to work on breakfast kind of situations. Yeah,
it's about just being a bit more aware of, and it reminds me how lucky I am, and you know, I don't have the perfect life, but I've put things in place that I absolutely love my life, and I love things about it. And I think it's a really good way of reminding ourselves that however bad things might be, there are some amazing things that we can stop and savor and be grateful for.
Thank you for the gem of wisdom there. And I'm afraid that is all the time that we have for today. Once again, it's always a joy to speak to you. Thank you so much for taking your time to share with us your experiences, especially in terms of the whole fascinating world of neuroscience. And of course, if you want to engage Sue as your next keynote speaker, consultant or trainer, either in the areas of emotional intelligence, neuroscience, or positive psychology, make sure you visit her website. I believe SueLangley.com. So that's SueLangley.com. And of course, you can also visit langleyGroup.com.au if you're interested to find out more about the Diploma of Positive Psychology and Wellbeing. And once again, I believe that through this course, you will learn to apply positive psychology in your workplace as well as your personal lives, which eventually going to make a significant differences in your lives and the lives of the people who's around you. Once again, thank you for joining us, Sue.
Thank you, Demas. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for watching. I'm Demas from Strength Optimizer. We are here to bring out the best in you through optimizing your strength. Have a fabulous day, everyone. Goodbye.